5 days weeks, 2.5 after we had your finish for us. Right. 5 days weeks, 2.5 after we had your finish for us. That's funny. Right. Good evening. Oh. Right. Oh, there's a few pictures, yes.
Oh, Benji, he's a part-time photographer.
There's one behind. Moshe, there's one behind you. Do you mind?
Yeah, I'm giving the job to someone else. Ben, your job today. Photos? Yes, you've been promoted. Oh, because a few people got sacked today. What's that? Defense Minister. Defense Minister.
Who got the defense?
Why not?
Mr. Trump. What's the point?
Still president within 2 months.
If you don't mind to do Tovkuf Mem Base, Mem Gimel, Mem Daled, Mem Hey, Mem Vav, Mem Zayin. That's it. We'll start. I don't think we mind too much more than that. So from Mem Base to Mem Zayin. Okay, let's get into it. We're up to Tzadik Aleph Amud Base, the bottom line. The Shimon holds you're allowed to carry from every rishus. That means from a chotzer to a kafaf to a kafaf to a mavoi, etc. There's one exception which Shimon clearly says. If it was in the house when Shabbos came in, says with Shimon, then you're not allowed to carry from a chotzer to a kafaf to etc. Came along Rav and he added to Reb Shimon. What did he add to Reb Shimon? So let's see. Okay. Very good. Well, what did Rav add to Shimon? All night you're probably thinking about it. What do you think, Shimon? That if there's an Eruv, then you're not allowed to carry anything at all. Why? Once there's an Eruv, there's a strong possibility you'll be taking things from your house into the Chotzer, and therefore we don't allow you to take anything from one Chotzer to the next because you'll end up taking things from your house into the Chotzer. That is what Rav added. What does Rabbi Yehuda say? Rabbi Yehuda says no. Rabbi Yehuda says you're allowed to carry from chotzer to chotzer even when there's an Eruv. Omari Rabbeinu Ravashi, top of Tzadik Beis Amud Aleph. Mi Omar Rabbi Yehuda Hachi. Did Rabbi Yehuda indeed say that according to Rabbi Shimon you're allowed to carry from place to place even when there's an Eruv? V'Omar Rabbi Yehuda Nalochik is Stam Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda tells us that whenever we have a Stam Mishnah, we pass like a Stam Mishnah. But now we learn to the Mishnah. If you've got a wall between two gardens, let's say me and Ben have a wall between our back gardens, and the wall is 10 tefachim high and 4 tefachim wide, what's the halacha? You can't pass between. Very good. Can we make an Eruv together? If there's no entrance, you can't. You can't make an Eruv together. Can we pass things from the top of the wall to below the wall? Very good. You can't even carry from the top of the wall to below the wall. So if the wall is 10 by 4, and you're standing on the wall, you can't pass with things below the wall.
You can carry on top, no?
You can carry on top. Now, according to Rabbi Shimon, what would you say? That halacha is mutar also. Why? Because Rabbi Shimon says you're allowed to carry from chotzer kafaf mavoi everywhere. So why shouldn't you be allowed to carry from the top of the wall to the bottom of the wall? Now, if you say that Rabbi Shimon was not talking about a case where there was an Eruv, so you could say that Mishnah was talking about the case where they made an Eruv. But if you say that Rabbi Shimon always says it's mutar, so Rabbi Yehuda is contradicting himself by passing here like Rabbi Shimon and saying that it's always mutar, and also pass like a Stam Mishnah which says it's always also. Again, let's see the words inside it. You can't make an Eruv together. You're not allowed to take from on top of the wall to the bottom of the wall. So it clearly says that you're not allowed to carry from the top of the wall to the bottom of the wall, not like what Shimon says. It says, when it says in that Mishnah, you're not allowed to carry into the house, it's down, it doesn't mean down into the chotzer, it means down into the houses. Just like Shimon says, you're not allowed to carry from a house to a chotzer, to another chotzer. You're not allowed to carry from Yedem's chotzer into your house. So therefore, it is awesome. So therefore, when it says lamata lebatim, it doesn't mean lamata. It doesn't mean lamata to the chotzer. It means lamata all the way into a house. For the Gemara, Tony Reb Chia wrote a brisa. he quoted the Brisa, where the Brisa says they're not even allowed to stand in the garden and eat, which is not like what we just explained. We explained Lamato means where Lamato in the house. But Rav Chia has got a Brisa, the Lamato means Lamato b'chotza. If Rebbe never quoted this Brisa, where does Rav Chia get it from? And if the fact that Rav Chia quoted this Brisa doesn't interest me, I'm only interested in what Yehuda Nossi had to say, and therefore, according to from Yehuda Nossi's words, you got no raya, and therefore you got no kasha. So the Raisa, this is how we pass them. According to like pass like a Birchanon, that you're allowed to carry from house to house, even from chotzer to chotzer. Sorry, from chotzer to chotzer, not from house to house. Chotzer to chotzer, even without a name. Itva. Shtei chatzeros v'chu v'achas b'neim. So here, did you upload the pictures? Right. So this is a very straightforward picture. It's the picture Tovkuf Mem Beis. Now, we're talking about two chatzeros and a chuva in between. Now, we're talking about Beshitas. Let's talk about this. According to Reb Shimon, are you allowed to carry from the chotzer to the chuva to the next chotzer? Can you see the three things on the row? Chotzer, chuva, chotzer. That patched roof is a chuva, a ruin.
You can get from the chotzer into the chuva.
Can you?
I don't know.
Yeah, you can. You can. Yeah, there's an entrance. Are you allowed to carry from one to the next, according to Reb Shimon, without an eruv? According to Reb Shimon, yes. And you're allowed to carry to chuva, according to Reb Shimon?
Yeah.
Yes, you're allowed to. So the way Rabbi Yochanan would say, you'd be allowed to carry without any eruv from the chotzer to the ruin, from the ruin to the next, from the deserted place, from the chuva to the next one. Now, what happens if one of them made an eruv? Would you be allowed to carry from the chotzer to the chuva? What would you say?
No.
Why not?
They both made an eruv together.
No, not made an eruv together. Each chotzer made an eruv on its own. Would they be allowed to carry into the chuva?
Yes.
Even more. According to Rav, not according to Birchner Mutter. Why? According to Rav, it's forbidden. Why according to Rav, it's forbidden? Because since each chotzer made its own eruv, we're concerned that people will take things from the house into the chotzer, and from the chotzer into the chuva, which is no good. So therefore, according to Rav, but according to Rabbi Yochanan, he's not concerned. It is true that Rabbi Yochanan would agree that you're not allowed to take something from the house into the chotzer, into the next chuva. But he's not choishish that that's going to happen. So according to Rav, it is forbidden. According to Birchner, it's permitted. The whole next Gemara is going b'shittas Rav because it's the Talmidim of Rav talking. Now the Talmidim of Rav had the following argument: what would you say in a case where one of them made an eruv and one did not make an eruv? Let's say the one on the right made an eruv between themselves and the one on the left did not make an eruv between themselves. What would you say that halacha is according to Rav? Why? Explain stuff why? Because they never made an eruv, and the one on the right who did make an eruv can't. That's what you would say. That's a very good point. That's what one of the Moim says again. The one on the right, they made an eruv to the house, so there's a chashash you'll take from the house into the chotzer and then into the chuva, which is forbidden. But the one on the left that never bothered making an eruv, there's no chashash they'll take from the house into the chotzer, not allowed to. And since there's no chashash, therefore they would be allowed to take from the chotzer afterwards into the chuva. That is indeed very correct. That is how one Amor says according to Rav. There's another shitta, and now that both chatzeros will have the equal status. In that shitta, we have two lashonos. One version is they're both forbidden, and one version they're both permitted. Anyone do want to strike a logic as to why both permitted, both be forbidden? I want to start from scratch to get it very clear. You have three areas, three domains. You've got two chatzeros with a chuva in the middle. According to Shimon, the simple halacha would be allowed to carry wherever you want. That's what Shimon's shitta. Without an eruv, you're allowed to carry wherever you want. If there's an eruv, then we have the machlokas Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says you're still allowed to carry wherever you want. Rav says no, you're not. Why not? Because once there's an eruv, you're allowed to take things from your house into the chotzer. And things that were originally in your house, you're not allowed to take from your chotzer into the next because they were originally in your house. So, as Moshe pointed out, if one chotzer makes an eruv, one doesn't, the halacha should be that the one that does not make an eruv would be allowed to carry more than the one that does make an eruv. Is that clear? Is that clear? Is it clear that the one who doesn't make an eruv should be allowed to carry, the one who does make an eruv should not be allowed to carry? Then we have a machlokas, another shitta, that both chatzeros have the same halacha. And then in that shitta, we have two versions Whether both should be mutter, both should be asa. Anybody want to say? Very good. That's why both should be asa. Why should both be asa? Because people will be looking at this area and they'll say to themselves, wait a second. These people, we didn't make an eruv together. And these people are carrying into the ruin in between. And they never made an eruv with the churba. So if they can, we can. And they won't realize the difference is because you've made an eruv, so therefore things coming from your house into the chutzah, therefore you're worse off. Here makes it worse. Normally makes it worse. So therefore it's a gzeir. Once you see one chutzah is carrying into the ruin, they'll do the other one step for both of us. There is a logic that both is mutter. And the logic is that people are reluctant to take things into a churba. Why? A churba is not a very good place to keep things safe, not a secure place. So therefore, the whole svara of Rav was, Shimon says, if you make an eruv, so you'll take things from your house into the chutzah, and before you know it, those same items which originally started keeping your house are usually personal items, like your coat, jacket, your personal things which you don't want to get lost. Those things
there's a case like children playing there.
Yes.
You can't just make that up just for normal things.
No, that means a churba will be different from a chutzah. That means even though by chutzah Rav says that when you make an eruv, you make things worse for yourself, by a churba Rav will agree that it doesn't. So we actually have three shittas in Rav. In Rabbi Yochanan, everybody agrees that what? You can carry wherever you want, because that's shittas of Shiur. According to Rav, there's a gzeir that once you make an eruv, things that in your house, you might carry into the chutzah, from the chutzah into the next domain, which is awesome. Then we have three shittas. What happens when you've got? This is the whole next gemara to the Mishnah. Itmel, shtei chatzeros, two chatzeros. V'chuva achas b'neihem, and there's one deserted ruin in between them. Achas irva, one chatzah made an eruv. V'achas lo irva, and one chatzah did not make an eruv. Amar Avona, nois lezu shelo irva. You allow only the ones that did not make an eruv. But the one that made an eruv is forbidden. Why? They might take things from the house into the churba. So therefore, the one that made an eruv is going to actually lose out and is not allowed to take things into the churba. That was Shittas Rav Huna. Rav Chia bar Rav Omar. Chia was actually the son of Rav, explaining according to his father, Af l'she'ir. That means he heard from his father that the halacha is the same for the one who made the eruv and the one who did not make the eruv. And we don't know now, what did he say according to Rav? And the Gemara says like this. V'shtei asuros. In the first version, both are forbidden. If you're going to say that both mutter, why do we not allow, when you've got a chotz that didn't make an eruv and the chotz that did make an eruv, we allow them to be able to carry? So Gemara says, no, you can't compare. There we're talking about a chotza, there's a chashash you'll take from one to the next. A person is not going to take things out from into a churba which he knows is not going to get guarded. So therefore you can't compare. We don't compare, we don't put from chotza shleirva to chotza shleirva, there is forbidden. It's not guarded. So there's two versions. Both of them, one version says that both are forbidden, one says both are permitted. And we say you can't compare to a chotza shleirva to chotza she'irva because there we're talking about a proper chotza. The proper chotza, there's a chashash you'll carry from one to the next. But shake it by a chuva, since it's deserted, people don't want to move things. That's therefore permitted. What do we pass? Like the first version, second version, or like the first Amor? Very good. That's a true question. We don't pass like any of these three versions because we pass like Rav Yochanan. And Rav Yochanan holds that according to Shimon, you're always allowed to carry, even when there's an eruv. And therefore it's important to remember, even when there's an eruv in town, let's for example, there's an eruv between the house and the chotzer, you're still allowed to carry from chotzer to chotzer. Well, not chayshish, you'll take things from the house to the chotzer further. Okay. New Mishnah, new topic. If it's possible to look at the picture for a minute and see how you would pass it. So we've got two pictures I'd like to examine, Tovkuf Mem Gimel and Tovkuf Mem Dalet. In Tovkuf Mem Gimel, you've got two houses adjacent to each other. Yes, we've had it all very similar. Tov Kuf Mem, Tov Kuf Mem Dalet. Let's go Tov Kuf Mem Gimel. What would you say? The big house belongs to one owner, let's say to me, and the small house belongs to Chaim. Chaim, you're not as wealthy as I am, right? So you own the small house, and they're adjacent to each other. That means like this. Between the two houses on the roof, you cannot see any wall whatsoever. You can't tell the difference. Oh, why? What's the logic?
That's what I remember.
We're talking about, am I allowed to carry my house? Is he allowed to carry you? Are you allowed to carry your roof? Or allowed to carry my roof? And Moshe said correctly the halacha without explaining why. He says,
I remember it.
I used to have a certain novice. He used to say, if anybody says a halacha without explaining why, don't listen to him. But he's got
the walls are extended out.
Very good. Look carefully at the big house. The big house has actually got 3 proper walls, and even on the fourth side, he's got walls going up. Since it goes up, so therefore he's got walls. It's got an entranceway. If you were to picture that wherever there's a wall at the bottom goes up into the sky, so he's actually got 3 walls with a 4th wall with like it's not a complete wall because at the end of the day there's an area which is adjacent to the small house, but he's got 4 walls. Similarly, but the small house can't carry. Why can't he carry? He's got on the 4th wall, that means the wall which is adjacent to the big one, he has no mechitza whatsoever because where the wall is, it's not counted.
Do we not say that the big house has to be the 4th one has to be a certain size?
Yes, that would be true. It has to be a certain size. Yeah, 40.
Would there not be an internal wall between the two, which is going to go up to...
Very good. Ask the question. No, what's that? Wait a second. Let's hear the question properly.
Because you don't know.
Earlier we had the machlekes Rav and Shmuel. Do internal walls go up to the heavens? If internal walls go up to the sky, what's wrong with this small roof?
Yes, because on the big one you can see your borders, and this one you can't see the.
So what? He just said there's an Amora earlier that told us internal walls go up to the heaven.
You can't see on them.
Internal walls you can never see.
Yeah. Well.
And if they go up to the heaven, they go up to heaven, to the Shemaim.
Room separate.
That's right. So Ben's asking, why can't the small one carry in his? That's the question. We'll leave it for a moment because we'll discuss it. But I was want to be clear. The small would dictate that the big one can carry, the small one can't, because the big one has proper walls. The small one doesn't. And exactly the same story in Tov Kuf Mem Dalet. Let's just look at it inside. You've got 2 chatzeros, right? The one chotzer has got a smaller property, and one chotzer has got a big property, a bigger chotzer. So again, here it's slightly easier to see it, by the way. Tov Kuf Mem Dalet might be better to start with that one. The big chotzer, imagine we can't see, there is no wall between them. That's an imaginary line down the middle, right? One property belongs to A, and the next property belongs to B. Not A, actually, it's a group of families on A and a group of families on B. So now what's the small? The big one, he's got 3 proper walls and a proper gateway on the sides. But the smaller one, what's he got? He's got nothing on the 4th wall. So the small one can't carry and the big one can carry. Yes?
And my question here doesn't come into...
Yes. Here, your question doesn't work. Why does... Oh, very good. Why does this question not work? Because over here, there is no hidden wall. There's no wall at all. So your question doesn't work. Okay. So now the Mishnah just tells. Now, Rashi says this half a dozen times. I'm going to say it once. It is a slightly complicated thing. Rashi is very disturbed. We once had an argument. We argued about this a few times right at the beginning of Eiruvin. And that is, it's called Nira Mebachutz, B'Shava Mebifnim. A wall which can be seen on the outside, but can't be seen on the inside. Is it a wall? Looking at Tov Kuf Mem Dalet, if you can look at it very carefully, is that a wall which is Nira Mebachutz Shava Mebifnim? Yes, it is. Why? If you're standing outside the chotzer, you can see that there's a wall there. It's only when you're standing in the chotzer you can't see it. Now we pasken, for reference, they should remember it, that Nirim B'achutz v'Shavim B'Bifnim is a mechitza. We pasken it is a mechitza. If you're standing on the outside the chotzer, and somebody would say to you, not on the inside. When you're standing on the inside, you can't see anything.
The smaller one.
When you're standing in the inside of the smaller one, I'm sorry. Yeah, there's no wall. You're standing in the middle. You can't tell, for example, if there's ever going to be a wall further. You can't see anything. You can because you've got a bird's eye view. But if you're standing in the side, the middle, if you're standing in the side, the small one, you can't see any walls at all.
You mean the ones that go to the side?
That's right. You can't see. Yeah, you can't see a 4th wall. You can't see a 4th wall at all. You can only see 3 walls if you're standing inside the small. If you're standing outside the small chutzah, can you see 4 walls? No. If you're standing out of the small chutzah,
You're standing on the street.
you're standing on the street. You're standing on the street.
Depends where.
No. Even if you
Depends
consider,
where.
if you stand outside of the small chutzah, you can see a 4th wall.
Yeah, because you can see the way it goes.
That's
So you assume it goes like that.
That's right. Very good. Oh, Moshe does it more simplistic.
No,
I'm talking about when you're standing outside the small one.
You assume that when it goes like that, it goes all the way.
When you're standing outside the small one, you're standing outside the small one. You can see on the
small
4th
side,
wall.
the small side.
Yes.
Yeah, if you stand outside the bigger side.
What?
If you stand outside the bigger.
You're right. You won't see anything. You're right. I'm talking about when you're standing outside the smaller one. What's the halacha? We paskin, just for your reference, you must remember, write it on your fridge after you've taken off the other things. We paskin that nira mibachutz v'shova mibifnim is a mechitza. So Rashi asks 100 times, not 100 times. Nira mibachutz v'shova mibifnim. A mechitza which can only be seen as a mechitza if you're standing outside is a mechitza.
You should be able to carry.
You should be able to carry. Ask Rashi. You should be able to carry. You should be able to carry. So now look at picture Tovkuf from Memhei. No, you're not allowed. No, we're going now. We're going now. We're talking about a more complicated situation. We want to carry from the house into the chutzah. Okay. So what? From the outside, it looks to you like a proper mechitza. If you're standing on the outside, so look at picture Tovkuf from Memhei. This is what Rashi tries to explain. I'm grateful to the fact that they bothered to make a picture of it. Is that this whole Mishnah is talking about a case where the walls is not like in Tovkuf from Dalet, where the walls go a little bit, but rather they continue on all the way. It's called Hishvu Eskifufeo. Where what happened was you continued the inner wall till the end. And that kind of wall doesn't work. We pass. Look at it. Look at picture Tovkuf from Memhei. But what you did was the inner walls, you continued them on. In your mind or actual? Actual.
Isn't that one chutzah? Isn't it one chutzah then? Isn't it just one big chutzah with some side?
Yeah, but no, but it belongs to 2 different people. But what you did,
right, so still.
It belongs to different people, but the inside, the bigger chutzah built up this walls all the way till the end.
Where are you carrying from to?
No, let's get it clear, because this is Kedai to get it clear.
Carrying from to now?
We're talking about being able to carry inside the small chutzah. No, you just want to carry in the small chutzah.
So then what happens?
What's time? What's saying? What's carrying the small
If the
chutzah?
walls go like that, then it's one big chutzah, then no one's got.
There's one
No
big
one can
chutzah.
carry.
It's one square chutzah. It's all the same for everyone.
Exactly, no one can carry.
Where's
Nope.
the small one?
What?
You think the small one is the one with the other 2 rooms at the edge?
The small one is there's one which has got a smaller chutzah. What do you mean? A smaller
Yeah,
chutzah?
but if there's 2 walls, then it's not small.
No, it's still the other one's got a bigger chutzah. It just has a couple of doorways and things like that. But it's got a bigger chutzah. If you were to sell that property, you'd get more money for it. It's got a big area. You can store his wood there. I don't know what you can do with it. Again, therefore, let me explain to finish off. Says Rashi, in such a case, we say nira mibachutz v'shova b'fnim is not a mechitza. Why? Because by building it up, you've ruined the outside mechitza. And therefore, the smaller mechitza is not allowed to carry. Again, let's start very, very slowly. I want to start from scratch because we're good. We want to get the principles clear. Again. In picture Tovkuf from Gimel, Tovkuf from Dalet, have you got the pictures? It's up through there. Okay, picture Tovkuf. The halacha is, let's get the halacha. The halacha is the one living in the bigger property, in the bigger chutzah, is allowed to carry. The one in the smaller chutzah, in the smaller roof, is not allowed to carry. Why is he not allowed to carry the one in the smaller chutzah and the smaller house? Because he has got a 4th wall. Very good. That's it. Ben asked the question, he's got an invisible wall. The Gemara tackles that. But the fact is, that is the halacha. The smaller one is not allowed to carry. He does not have a 4th wall. Asks Rashi, what do you mean he doesn't have a 4th wall? Of course, he does have a 4th wall. Where's the 4th wall? On the outside. What? The one which can be seen from the outside. That means if you're standing outside the small chutzah, and somebody would say to you, how many walls does this chutzah have? You would say, it's got 4. I can see the 4. I walk around the perimeter and I'll see 1, 2, 3, and I can see one which is jutting out. So that is a wall. You assume it goes in. It's not just that you assume it goes in. It's imaginary going in because it's showing you where the borderline is. By the fact that on the outside you can see a wall, that makes it very clear that this is a wall. Says Rashi that no, over here we're talking about Tov Kuf Mem Hey, meaning that not only you cannot see it on the inside, but you've actually built it up on the inside, and therefore it's not a wall. Okay, I'm not going to.
Does it mean the wall that the big guy builds? Yeah,
Yes.
But the wall that the big guy builds.
Yes,
It
what?
prevents the wall jutting up.
Very good.
Can the big guy
Very
carry the
good.
small
The
guy?
one which the bigger chotzer built, by building it up, he's preventing the wall which is near Mibachut from being considered a
The
wall.
small guy can't carry the big one.
He can't carry his own chotzer even.
And can the big guy carry?
Yes, the big
But I
guy.
know because the other guy, the other guy might get confused like another case.
Okay, that's a good question. We'll actually discuss it tonight here elsewhere. That's why we talk about over here. He's got 4 walls. You're making up a gezer that maybe it's posed from lawyer. The Gemara says not considered posed from lawyer because he'll remember from the walls not to carry into the next person's house. Okay, but let's get the Mishnah inside now. Says the Mishnah, Gag Godel, a big roof, Sabach Gag Cotton, Hagodel Mutter, Cotton also. Why is the Godel Mutter now Cotton also? 3 walls for us. Mishnah, I just read the first time Mishnah. Chotze Gedele is different to Ketano, Gedele Mutter, Ketano, Asom, Tish, Kepischa, Shol, Gedele, because it's like the entrance of the Godel. So again, big chotze, small chotze is forbidden. There's expression, Bozla and Nia, Ozla and Yusa. Poor people just get poorer, and rich people get richer. And more says it. Over here, the one who's got the smaller chotze is not allowed to carry in his chotze. The wealthy person's got a massive chotze, he's allowed to because life's not fair. Now, let's think very clearly. The Mishnah over here told us the exact same halacha twice. Exact same halacha twice.
The roof and the chotzer.
Yeah, it's the exact same halacha twice. Why is Mishnah to tell us both? The Gemara answers by tackling the question which Ben asked. What do you mean? Exact same halacha. In both cases, you've got 3 walls for one, 4 walls for the other, and the 4th wall is built from the fact that it's called gifufim. Gifufim is called, what's gifufim in English? Barriers or panel. No, it's closed off a little bit of the side. What? No, because it's throughout the side walls. What are the side walls called? Posts, maybe posts. Answers the Gemara like this.
It's using the same, you're making.
Lobel in the mistitati. The Gemara gets more complicated. Rav. According to Rav, that he says that internal walls are not a real wall. That internal walls are not a real wall. Katani gag dumi de chotze. Ma chotze minko mechitzasa af gag dami minko mechitzasa. Just like by chotze, it only works when you've got a real wall, and a wall which is hidden, a wall which is below the roof is not considered. Also by a roof, it doesn't work. You have to have a mechitza which can go through the ceiling. So a mechitza which is hidden. Hey, what's the better word? Not hidden. What did you call it? A mechitza which is covered by a ceiling is not a mechitza. And concealed wall is not a wall. Why is it not a wall? Because when you're standing on the roof, the fact that below there's a partition doesn't help me. Shmuel says it does work. Going back to that picture, normally, the more answer, according to Shmuel, normally you'd be right, says Shmuel. Normally, a concealed wall would be a wall, and therefore the small chotzer would be allowed. But over here, you have a problem. That what happens is people are walking to and fro the whole time because there's nothing there to show them anything. So then we've lost the ability to have a mechitza, and if the mechitza is lost, a concealed wall is a wall only as long as you haven't got the public throughway going over and across it. And here you have, and therefore it's not considered a wall. That's Shmuel. That means the machlokes Rav and Shmuel earlier, concealed wall fits in according to both. According to Rav, our Mishnah is very good. A concealed wall is not a wall, only like a chotzer. We're teaching you just like a chotzer, you have to have a real wall. Also, here you have to have a real wall. According to Shmuel, we're teaching us the other way around, that really a concealed wall would work. But since over here, that everybody's walking back and forth, you've lost it. Right. And according to Shmuel, let's say the public would not walk back and forth across the roof. Would the small person living in the small house be allowed to carry on his? Yes, and that's what Rashi says. Says Rashi, even though you can't see it, says Rashi, it would work. Now, the more that goes off on a tiny bit of a tangent. From this Mishnah, the Rishonim says, the last words of the Mishnah says, the small chutzah is like the entranceway of the big chutzah. From here we see a fundamental yesod, that when you've got a big room and a small room, the small room is considered toffel. It is considered secondary. It's considered just an addition to the main. Inferior. Well, not just inferior. I like a better word than that. It's considered subservient to the main one. That's subservient, secondary. Okay. And the Gemara now is going to tell us 5 different halachic nafkaminas through the whole of Shas. And some of them are very interesting because it's got to do with all kinds of things. So you must remember, if, for example, you're going to ask what happens, you've got this main shul in basis sol, you've got a smaller room here. What happens if you've got 5 people in here and 5 people in there? Can you make a minyan? So this is the Gemara which talks about it of all places. And what's the Mishnah tell us? The Mishnah says that the small one is subservient. It is secondary to the big one. Yosef, Rabba, Rab Zeira, Rabba, Rab Chana. There were 3 great Amorim sitting together. Yosef, Abai, Gabai, and Abai was sitting next to them. Yosef Vikami, Shma minam maslisin Diur Gedola Bektano, Diur Ktano Begedola. The people living in the big chutzah, they have power. They have domain over the small one. The small ones do not have domain over the big ones. Keitzat, I'm going to tell us a lot of halachas. One of the halachas is you're not allowed to plant vines and vegetables together. It's called kilaim. Now, what happens if you've got 2 fields, one big and one small, with a similar shape of our Mishnah, and you plant vines in one and grain and vegetables in the other? So now, if you plant vines in the big one, you can't plant anything in the smaller one. Why can't you plant anything in the smaller one? Because the smaller one is secondary to the big one, so it's part of it. If you did, it will all be forbidden. But if you do it the other way around, and the grapes will be mutter because the grapes were planted top of Tzaddik base on the base. They were planted the big one, and that's the main reshus. What? They get priority. Oh, good. Priority status. If you plant vines in the small one, you're allowed to plant in the big one. Because the Ikka Issa is to plant in a vineyard. And here the vineyard is in the small one. The small one is subservient to the big one. So it's not, you can't say, well, now they're planted in the small one vines, the big one's forbidden. No, the big one is the main reshus. And therefore, if you plant vines only in the small one, you're allowed to plant grain and vegetables in the big one. Another shaila. The halacha is that when you divorce a woman, you have to give her the get that's put in her reshus. Now, what happens if a woman owns 2 chatzeros, Isha b'gedola, and she's standing in the main one? The get b'ktana, you throw the get into the smaller chatzah. Divorce or not? Both are hers. What?
Why don't they join the chatzeros?
The same shape as our Mishnah.
It's all in one.
But you want to put it in... No.
It's 2 different sets of chatzeros.
What?
Put on a front doorstep.
No. If you look at Rashi, it's more getting. The harder to that, it's the middle of the Rashi of Isha. That when you divorce a woman, it's not enough that she goes into her chutzah. It has to be that she's standing in her chutzah at the time.
Did the 2 chatzeros not join?
No, she's got 2 chatzeros with that shape, right? It's big. There's a semi-wall, and she's standing in the big chutzah, and you throw the get into the small chutzah. The halacha is that you have to throw the get into the same chutzah that she's standing in. Same reshus. So Isha b'gedola v'get b'ktana miskar reshus. Isha b'ktana v'get b'gedola ain't a miskar reshus. Similarly, if she's in the small one and you throw the get to the big one, that's right. So she's not miskar reshus. And Rashi says, even though you would say, wait a second, if she's in the small one, so therefore she's subservient to the get. So Rashi says the get has to go to her, not her to the get. And therefore when she's in the small one and the get throws into the big one, she's not divorced. Tzibur b'gedola, if you've got a tzibur standing in the main one, the shliach tzibur b'ktana and the shliach tzibur standing in the small chutzah, yotz nidei chayvosam, they're yotza, because what happens is, by standing in the small one, which is subservient to the big one, he's standing in their reshus. In olden days, the shliach tzibur would actually be moitzi people who couldn't reach Shmoneh. So you needed to be yotza from the chassid. You actually had to be yotza from him, not like nowadays. So So you have to be yotze from him. How can you be yotze from him if he's not in your reshus? So therefore, you're not in yotze. In yotze, in the chavos, not yotze. I just looked up a little bit about this. Dan Weiss has got a couple of tshuvas on this because I was discussing with someone this morning, and he said, "Sorry, why we were discussing." We suddenly realized, I don't know if you have daven in Shari Modcha, and somebody else said that he wants daven in Avizal Shul in Sfas. What happens is some of the shuls, the bima is an entire own reshus. It's actually got 4 walls around it. So how can you lane there? You have to lane.
MH, the main shul.
No, you can see over.
No, it
I
doesn't
think
make
the one
difference
you're
if you
talking
can
about,
see over. If it's 10 tefachim, it doesn't make a difference if you can see over.
MH's thing.
I don't remember the H, I don't remember.
MH is probably more than 10 spots than that.
Well, it's got walls all the way, 4 walls
Yeah,
on.
you've got your 2
Have you ever been
sides.
to the Avizal's Shul in Sfas? It's mamish a
Not
proper,
really high.
yeah, it's a proper own. Says the Dan Weiss that all of this is talking about when you happen to have 2 rooms. You never built it as a shul like that. If you build a shul, he says, even if you build it with a number of rooms, each one adjoining to the next, and let's say one goes like this, and the next one is a bit that way, and the next one's a bit narrower, it doesn't make a difference. That's how the shul was built. It's all one reshus, and if the same thing by bima, it's not a problem. But over here, the Gemara is talking about we happen to have 2 rooms, like what happened was there was code. And if you happen to have some people down in one place, if that one place have another place. Now here, I would assume that Dan Weiss would say to this is all one shul. This was built as to be one shul.
Yeah, it's not there.
I know it was built to be a part of the same shul. I would imagine it'd be okay. What? Similarly, says the Gemara, Tisha B'Gdul of Yochid B'Ktan. If you've got 9 in the big one, Yochid B'Ktan, it's Talfim. Because the one is in by himself, the individual in the small one is bottled to the big one. Tisha B'Ktan, we've got 9 in the small one, Echad B'Gdul. Ain't it Talfim? Because what happens is we need to have the majority in the Gedolah. And here, there's only 1 in the Gedolah. So what happens is, what? Oh, that's a big shiloh. What happens if you've got 6 and 4? So Tosis Mash for 6 and 4 would be okay. 5 and 5 is no good. So again, there's a lot of halachas, but this is important. That means basically we're saying that if you've got a porch in the dining room, a porch coming off your hallway, the porch is always going to be considered like secondary to the thing. So if you've got a chazan standing in your porch, and most people standing, that's fine. But if you've got everybody, if it's the chazan standing in the hall and everyone's standing in the porch, it's no good. Soya b'gedolah, if you've got soya excrement in the big one, osilikus k'yasha b'gtano. So b'gtano, mutilikus k'yasha b'gedolah, you're allowed to say shema in the big one. Here, the Rishonim point out one small thing. Oh,
so therefore you can smell it in your
oh, very good. Definitely have a lechayim, because I didn't think of this. As long as you can't smell it. And then the issa is only if it's in the same reshus. There's 2 isurim. One is if soya is in the same reshus. I remember one time I made Kiddush, and straight after Kiddush, my wife said she suddenly realized with the Kiddush that the maybe needed changing. The looked it up, it's also posh. And then afterwards I found there's a safe called Hilchas Shabbos B'Shabbat by Moshe Mordechai. He lived in Kiryat Sefer at the time. He did a shaykhus with him. It was a phenomenal. He is a phenomenal Talmud Chacham. Hilchas Shabbos B'Shabbat. It's written now about 40 svarim, and they're all like works very. And he writes there that before Kiddush, check your children. They didn't need changing.
So how Corona can't smell anymore. Should be a problem.
So he says Lamaisa. So he says Lamaisa that if you made Kiddush, okay, but you haven't, but not you don't make Kiddush again. Okay, Lamaisa, as long as you can't smell it, and therefore the whole problem is only the reshus. He's okay. So the Lamaisa, they said like this. Let's just get very clear. They said from our Mishnah we see that the smaller area, which has got in the picture we had in our Mishnah, is secondary to the big area, and then they found 5 nafkiminas if you count them out. Omalu Abaya, Imkain, Motzinu Mechitza le'issa. Abaya comes up with a very interesting kind of question. Abaya says like this: according to your logic, sometimes we're going to find that building a mechitza, usually when you build a mechitza, it makes things more mutter because it makes it more of an area, more of an enclosure. I'm going to find you a case according to your logic that by building a mechitza, things get worse. What's the case? What's the case? Shilmole ein mechitza, if there would be no mechitza. That means we talk about going to the grapevine. And there be no mechitza, how much distance do you have to have between a vine and your vegetables? 4 amas. Alba says more like that. If you've got a grapevine and it would be completely open, 4 amas away you can start planting. But if you've got a very big chotzer and a small chotzer, like in the picture of our Mishnah, and you plant a grapevine, and let's say the small chotzer is 10 amas, but it's smaller than the bigger one, would you be allowed to plant anywhere in that chotzer? No. Why not? Because it's secondary to the big one, subservient to the big one. So it comes out that by building walls, you've actually made it worse for yourself. Could that possibly be? Had there been no walls at all, what's the distance you need? 4 arms. Now that you've built walls, you've got this picture. No, what's the wall? If you remember, you've got a big chotzer, like the picture, and a small chotzer. It's imaginary wall between the two. No, it's not only doesn't help you, it makes things worse. Now you look at the picture again.
You can't even go 4 hours.
Even if you go 4 amas, you can't plant. You can't plant anything. Very good. You can't plant anything. Let's look at picture Tofkuf Mem Dalet. Let's say Tofkuf Mem Dalet, you planted the entire big one with vines. And then you want to plant next to the houses a bit of vegetables, and it's more than 4 amas away. Mutter Osa? Osa. Wait a second, let's just finish off. Osa. Why is it Osa? Because the smaller one is subservient to the bigger one. But more than 4 amas away is a way that sometimes built this. It's not logical that building walls should make things worse. Yeah.
If the smaller one was the same area size as the bigger one,
It would
and
still
it's
be
just longer and
subservient.
narrower.
Still be
If
subservient.
it's bigger but longer and narrower.
Still subservient because it's to do with the
Still
shape.
looks like it's
Yeah, sometimes you can have a hallway which is very big, but a porch is very big, but it's not. So Abaya's question is not a halachic question, by the way. It's a logical question. The logical question is, how can it be in your vine, in your story of the vine, you're not allowed to plant anywhere in the small chotzer? I don't understand this Abaya. Building walls made it worse. Omli Abzela Abaya. That's very interesting. Tesis says, bottom Tesis, if you remember, there were 3 Amorim that said this halacha. Yosef Rabba, 3 lines from the bottom side based on that. Rabba of Zeh, Rabba of Cholom. If you look at the next Gemara, it's like based on Mudalef, 3 lines from the bottom, it was 3 Amorim. Rabba, Rab Zeh, and Rabba Bar Chonon, all 3 came up with this logic that in 5 different cases we're going to find a situation where it comes out halachic nafkamina that the small is subservient to the big one. And now the Gemara brings 3 of them try to justify against Abai. What was Abai's question? Are you going to have walls make things worse? They all come to justify it. So he said like this: have you never found a mechitza leisa about nan hot sekadol shtefet selektan no gdul mtelkstan asur mtish kipis chashakdol vilu hishva is gufufeach gedol nami asur. Oh, I knew I made a mistake. Like this. What small mistake? Going back to that picture, Tofkuf Memhei. Tofkuf Memhei. There's 2 levels of continuing the wall. One is when you continue the wall all the way to the end, and one is when you only continue the wall halfway. Rashi, when he was trying, Tofkuf Memhei. Look at the picture of Tofkuf Memhei.
Yeah.
When you can continue the wall halfway, or you can continue the wall the entire way. Rashi, when he was answering that question, which I asked you on the beginning, that is Nir Bachutz Shavim Bifnim, said we're talking about when you continued it halfway, so halfway. Now the Gemara says, what happens if you continue it the whole way? Then the Gedolah will also be also.
What are you talking about? Across
These walls, these thin walls. Right, but look at Tofkuf Mem Dalet. There you have none. Rashi, they didn't make another picture. Rashi talks about another one on the first where it only goes half. And Tofkuf Mem Hey goes the whole. They have a picture of half. Right. Says the Gemara like this: by building the wall all the way to the end, now the Gedolah is also not allowed to carry. So you see, very cool. So you see that what? That building walls can sometimes make things worse. Says the Gemara, Omalei, what?
do it the whole way and then do it all.
Yes. Omalei, that's not because building a wall made things worse. That is simply because by building that wall, you're getting rid of the previous wall. And you're not, when you create a whole new wall, it's not likely to say that mechitza makes things worse. But here you're building a whole new wall completely. Here you're getting rid of the original wall by building this wall along. And therefore that's why it's no good. I want to do the next 4 lines of more, because the thing, let's just look at a picture of Tofkuf Mem Vav and Tofkuf Mem Zayin. Very, very briefly. Tofkuf Mem Vav, you've got a chuppah. And what happened was you put schach on top. Right? Tofkuf Mem Zayin, what you did was, you put panels across the bottom of the chuppah. And what's the difference? In Tovkuf Memvov, because you've got a chuppah, each stand of the chuppah is a tefach by a tefach. So you've actually got a tzuras Pesach on all four walls that you've got actually. Here you can, because, okay, we'll discuss that. Okay, even without that wall, I don't know why they had to add, okay, yes. Because then that way you've got, no, sorry, you're right, because then you can't, I want to point out you've got at least 2 whole walls and 2 tzuras Pesach, that's good enough. 2 whole walls and 2 tzuras Pesach.
What does that help with the panel?
The panels make it worse. The panels, by putting the panels there, you're not, the sukkah becomes possible. Can you imagine such a thing? Why? You tell me why. Because now you've only got 2 walls.
Why can't you go the pencil? Oh, because it's not.
Because before you had 2 walls properly and then another 2 coming out a tefach. By putting a panel there, you've actually hidden.
Have we had something similar?
By building a wall, you made the wall go away.
That's right. By building a wall, they will go away. Says the Gemara, what did Abaye argue? That there's no such thing as building a wall makes things worse. Says, well, yes, there is. I've got such a case over here. Let's do the wall inside. So we'll take this. P'tzimin are doorposts, I think is the correct English translation. It's possible, so you see that building things make things worse. According to me, I actually hold that it's okay. So you can't compare it. It's because you've actually got rid of a wall. I'm talking about a case we haven't got rid of a wall. Let's just briefly summarize. If you plant a vine and you've got no walls or anything, what's the distance to start planting your carrots and your peas? 4 arms. If you make a big chotzer and off it a small chotzer, what's the halacha? You can't plant at all in a small chotzer. That is what these 3 Amavoim said. Abaye objected. What was Abaye's objection? How can it be that building walls makes things worse? Says the Gemara, I'm going to prove you from cases that building walls makes things worse. And the Gemara tomorrow is going to continue trying to prove that building walls makes things worse. That is the argument that we're going to have. Okay, shkech. How are you, Todd? You okay?
Yeah, Baruch Hashem, just my daughter had temperature tonight, so got to book her a test tomorrow.
After